The US-China tech war is worsening, and the United States has no clean solution. What was once framed as a contest over chips, artificial intelligence, and export controls has now become a deeper crisis of political economy. The AI build-out is no longer just a Silicon Valley project. It has become one of the supports holding up the American economy itself. Once that happens, technology policy stops being a matter of innovation alone. It becomes a question of recession, financial leverage, industrial capacity, and geopolitical survival. AI infrastructure investment may reach 2% of US GDP in 2026. That is almost the size of the entire US defense budget. This is an extraordinary fact because it means AI has moved from being a speculative technology sector into becoming a macroeconomic engine. Data centers, chips, cooling systems, construction, power equipment, energy infrastructure, cloud contracts, and financial markets are now tied together by the same assumption that AI demand will keep expanding fast enough to justify the scale of investment already committed. This is why Washington cannot simply allow the AI boom to slow down. A sudden stop would not remain confined to the tech sector. It would immediately affect construction firms building data centers, chip makers supplying GPUs, manufacturers producing power systems, companies designing cooling infrastructure, and investors who have priced the future as though AI growth is inevitable. The AI boom has become a chain. If one part weakens, the stress moves across the whole structure. This is the trap. The United States needs the AI build-out to continue because too much economic momentum now depends on it. At the same time, the scale of the build-out creates its own danger. It requires enormous capital, high future demand, cheap enough financing, and global customers willing to pay American prices for AI compute. None of those conditions is guaranteed. Washington's anxiety over China makes this trap worse. The fear that China may win the AI race has clouded judgment. Trump's public framing is simple. America must be number one in AI or China will take over. He presents US leadership in AI as evidence of national strength, stock market confidence, and renewed American power. The problem is that this political language pushes the United States toward a strategy built on momentum rather than stability. Trump's confidence is not incidental. It is part of the mechanism. The administration needs markets to keep rising. It needs investors to believe that the United States remains far ahead. It needs the AI narrative to stay intact because the stock market, corporate balance sheets, and political legitimacy have all become entangled with it. In that sense, AI is no longer only an industry. It has become a governing myth. The financial exposure is already massive. US tech companies have reportedly made future data center lease commitments exceeding $850 billion. These are not abstract numbers. These are obligations that will eventually appear on balance sheets. If AI demand keeps growing, companies can justify them. If demand weakens before these leases generate sufficient returns, the problem becomes immediate. The domino effect is easy to imagine. Hyperscalers stop signing new leases. Property developers stop building new facilities. GPU orders fall. Demand for power equipment declines. Cooling infrastructure projects slow down. AI capital expenditure collapses. The entire investment cycle depends on faith in future demand. Once that faith breaks, the collapse does not politely stay inside one sector. The danger is intensified by investor leverage. Margin debt has reportedly reached $1.4 trillion, equal to about 6.2% of the total US money supply. That means a huge amount of borrowed money is now betting on rising stock prices. In a normal market, overconfidence is already dangerous. In a leveraged market, it becomes combustible. This is how bubbles become crashes. When investors are heavily leveraged, falling prices do not simply lead to caution. They trigger margin calls. Margin calls force selling. Forced selling pushes prices lower. Lower prices create more margin calls. The market does not gently correct. It breaks in stages. The warning signs resemble previous episodes. The dot-com bubble and the global financial crisis were also preceded by periods of extreme confidence, rising valuations, and dangerous leverage. The specific assets were different, but the structure was familiar. A market tells itself that a new era has arrived. Debt accumulates around that belief. Then the belief cracks. Semiconductor stocks add another layer of risk. Their valuations have been lifted by the same AI narrative, but they also have their own bubble dynamics. If demand for AI compute weakens, chip stocks can fall sharply. If chip stocks fall, the broader market absorbs the shock. If the broader market falls while leverage is high, the economy begins to feel it quickly. This is why financing matters. When a Korean chip giant such as SK Hynix seeks to raise tens of billions of dollars from US investors, the transaction is not just about one company. It shows how deeply global capital is being pulled into the AI supply chain. The more money committed to this narrative, the more painful the reversal becomes, if the narrative fails. Interest rates make the problem worse. Previous market bubbles were not destroyed by speculation alone. They were destabilized when rates rose into already fragile financial structures. Once borrowing costs become high enough, the machinery of optimism starts to jam. The same danger is visible now. If the Federal Reserve moves toward rate hikes while AI valuations are stretched and debt exposure is already high, the system becomes more vulnerable. China understands this pressure point. Its strategy does not require matching the United States chip for chip at every frontier of performance. China can attack the economic foundation of the US AI model by making AI access cheaper across the world. That is the more serious threat. The United States has built an AI model that depends on expensive compute, expensive infrastructure, expensive chips, and high token prices. China can weaken that model by lowering the global cost of AI. If Chinese AI becomes cheap enough and good enough, many businesses outside the United States will not care whether it is marginally behind the most advanced American systems. They will care that it works and that they can afford it. This is where China's global infrastructure strategy becomes decisive. A reported $39 billion Chinese data center project in Brazil, beginning with 200 megawatts of capacity and eventually scaling to 1 gigawatt, is not merely a commercial project. It is a strategic declaration. It tells the world that China is willing to build AI infrastructure abroad, use Chinese servers, Chinese networking equipment, and Chinese AI chips, then compete directly for global AI customers. This disrupts one of the assumptions behind the American AI investment thesis. The United States imagined that China would build primarily for domestic use, while American companies sold AI compute to the rest of the world. China's move into Brazil breaks that assumption. It shows that China intends to build the infrastructure of global AI access itself. The cost argument is already visible. US AI is becoming too expensive for many companies to use at scale. Uber reportedly capped AI token spending at $0.05 per employee per month and burned through its entire 2026 AI budget in 4 months. That example matters because it shows that even large technology-dependent firms are beginning to ration AI consumption. If Silicon Valley firms are struggling with operating costs, the problem will be worse for companies in the global south. This is where Chinese models become commercially powerful. A Chinese model delivering 80% to 90% of the raw capability of a leading American model at 10 to 50 times lower cost does not need to win the prestige race. It only needs to win procurement decisions. Most firms do not buy ideology. They buy usable capacity at sustainable cost. China's domestic build-out reinforces this. A nearly $300 billion national AI infrastructure program built on Chinese chips, Chinese state-owned firms, and Chinese-controlled supply chains shows a state pursuing technological sovereignty at scale. This is not a fragmented private sector race driven by quarterly earnings alone. It is a national industrial project designed to create an independent AI ecosystem from end to end. Once that ecosystem reaches capacity, it will create sustained pressure on US big tech. China will not only have domestic AI infrastructure, it will have the capacity, experience, financing, and supply chains to export that infrastructure abroad. The implications for emerging markets are enormous. If China builds data centers across Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia, countries in these regions will gain access to affordable local AI infrastructure. That matters because the future of AI adoption will not be determined only in California, New York, London, or Brussels. It will be determined in the places where governments and companies need cheap compute for logistics, education, public services, manufacturing, agriculture, translation, planning, and development. China is positioning itself early. It is building capacity before the United States can offer a comparable response. It is linking infrastructure, financing, chips, and market access in a single strategy. The result is a self-reinforcing loop. China builds the data centers, Chinese chips fill those data centers, local firms and governments use the infrastructure, demand for Chinese chips grows, Chinese AI becomes embedded in the development path of emerging markets. This is the strategic logic Washington struggles to answer. Trump can talk up markets, he can praise corporate leaders, he can insist that America is winning, but China is building systems. The difference is material. One depends on confidence, the other depends on infrastructure. The tariff war was supposed to bring investment back to the United States on a historic scale. It did not. Even if foreign direct investment increased by around $80 billion, that figure is far below the trillions that were promised or implied. The United States needs an industrial response large enough to match China's infrastructure push. Tariffs alone cannot do that. Market hype cannot do that. Stock buybacks cannot do that. China is also attacking the cost structure of AI infrastructure itself. Its underwater data center project, powered by wind and cooled through ocean infrastructure, shows the direction of travel. If cold seawater can reduce cooling energy consumption by 90%, the economics of data centers change. Land costs, grid stress, cooling infrastructure, and energy costs are some of the biggest constraints on AI expansion. Reducing those costs means cheaper compute. That is the real issue. China's advantage may not come only from having the most advanced chip at any single moment. It may come from building the cheapest complete system. Chips matter, but so do energy, cooling, land, financing, supply chains, and local deployment. The country that lowers the total cost of AI infrastructure can shape the global market. Chinese semiconductor progress adds to this pressure. Firms are advancing rapidly, and investor interest in Chinese chip companies is rising for a reason. Huawei's alternative chip architectures, Chinese work on 3D stacking, and efforts to bypass traditional lithography constraints all point toward the same objective. China wants to reduce dependence on Western choke points, especially ASML equipment. This is the weakness in the U.S. export control strategy. Washington assumes that restricting advanced manufacturing equipment can preserve a permanent advantage. But if China develops competitive workarounds, those controls lose force. Export restrictions may delay China. They may raise costs. But they may also accelerate Chinese self-reliance by forcing the creation of domestic alternatives. The domestic Chinese AI chip market is already enormous, reportedly worth more than $50 billion a year. The next stage is global. China does not intend to supply only itself. It intends to export chips, infrastructure, and AI capacity at commercial scale. Hong Kong appears to be emerging as a major distribution hub, with Chinese chip exports to Hong Kong reportedly exceeding $15 billion in May 2026 alone. Some of those chips serve regional data centers, others are re-exported across Asia, Latin America, and Europe. Chinese chips are already entering ordinary Western consumer products. CXMT memory chips have reportedly appeared inside Corsair Vengeance DDR memory kits sold through mainstream retail channels. The reason is simple. They are cheaper, reportedly 20% to 30% below comparable chips from Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix. Once again, price opens the door. The same logic applies globally. If China's total chip exports exceeded $35 billion in May alone and continue growing sharply, the trend cannot be dismissed as marginal. When Chinese-built data centers in Brazil and elsewhere begin operating, they will create additional demand for Chinese chips. Infrastructure becomes the market for semiconductors. Semiconductors become the foundation for AI services. AI services bind local businesses and governments into the system. This is China's integrated strategic loop. Build the regional data centers, fill them with Chinese chips, offer cheaper AI access, create dependence through practical use, expand demand for Chinese hardware, use that demand to finance the next stage of infrastructure. It is patient, material, and difficult to counter through rhetoric. Meanwhile, American AI firms are becoming more entangled with state power. OpenAI's reported proposal to donate a 5% equity stake worth about $42 billion to a U.S. sovereign wealth fund shows how strange the environment has become. A company that once presented itself as a frontier laboratory now operates inside the pressures of geopolitics, regulation, capital markets, and national strategy. The motive is obvious enough. OpenAI wants political breathing room. It wants freedom to expand abroad without constant interference from Washington. That is the irony of the American position. The United States speaks the language of free markets, yet its AI champions are increasingly tied to state power, national security politics, export controls, and geopolitical bargaining. The market is not free. It is managed, pressured, subsidized, protected, and politically weaponized. The question now is whether the United States can win the AI race through marginally more advanced chips, while China builds cheaper, broader, and more accessible systems across the world. The American bet is that technological superiority at the frontier will preserve dominance. China's bet is that cost, scale, infrastructure, and global deployment will matter more. For the global south, the answer may already be obvious. Countries do not need lectures about rules-based technology leadership. They need affordable compute, infrastructure, financing, and development tools that can actually be used. If China can provide that at scale, then the AI race will not be decided only in the laboratories of Silicon Valley. It will be decided in Brazil, Africa, Southeast Asia, and the wider world that has long been treated as a market to be captured rather than a world to be built with. The United States has no clean solution, because its problem is not merely China. Its problem is the structure it built around its own supremacy. It needs AI to keep markets alive. It needs high valuations to sustain confidence. It needs export controls to slow China. It needs cheap capital while facing inflation and rate pressure. It needs global customers while selling expensive compute. It needs to look dominant while becoming more fragile. China does not need to defeat the United States on every technical benchmark. It only needs to make the American model too expensive, too leveraged, and too narrow for the rest of the world. That may be the more important race. Not who builds the most impressive machine, but who builds the system that others can actually afford to use.